William Marshal was born around 1146, most likely in Wiltshire or Berkshire, at a time when England was in the middle of a civil war between King Stephen and Empress Matilda. He was the fourth son of a minor noble, a position that promised no land, no title, and no real future. When his father rebelled against the king, William's fate turned grim. During the siege of Newbury Castle in 1152, his father surrendered him to King Stephen as a hostage. The king is said to have threatened to hang the boy, but in the end he spared him, an uncommon act of mercy in a war that rarely showed any. Years later, William earned his knighthood in Normandy. He proved himself in the rough tournaments of Anjou and Poitou. The same courage carried him into royal service, first under Henry II, then Henry the Young King, later Richard the Lionheart, and finally King John. In his later years, when rebellion once again threatened England, Marshal was chosen as regent and held the kingdom together. At the age of 70, he led the army to victory at the Battle of Lincoln in 1217, defeating the French and preserving the crown. When William died 2 years later in 1219, he was buried in London's Temple Church. Ulric von Liechtenstein was born around 1200 in Styria, Austria, a land of castles and border wars on the edge of the Holy Roman Empire. Trained in the knightly arts, he served under Duke Leopold VI, but Ulrich longed for something deeper than battle. He believed that chivalry should celebrate love as much as war. In his legendary, though theatrical work known as the Venusfar, he disguised himself as the goddess Venus and rode across Europe, challenging knights to joust in her honour. His poem, Frohen Diest, Service of Ladies, retells those adventures, blending fact and imagination into one of medieval Europe's most unusual autobiographies. Behind the pageantry, Ulrich was a practical man, a noble managing estates, settling disputes, and serving as a provincial governor. Yet his heart stayed tied to the ideals of beauty and honour. He showed that knighthood wasn't only about battle and conquest. Ulrich died around the year 1275. James Douglas was born around 1286 in Lanarkshire, Scotland, in the midst of the nation's long fight for freedom against the English rule. When the English seized his family lands, he joined Robert the Bruce, vowing to reclaim them or die trying. Douglas spent more than 20 years in rebellion. He became known as the Black Douglas, a name whispered in fear by English garrisons. At Loudon Hill in 1307, he outmanoeuvred much larger forces. At Bannockburn in 1314, he fought beside Bruce in one of Scotland's greatest victories. 4 years later, in 1318, he led the assault that retook Berwick, the last major English stronghold in Scotland. He was brutal, cunning, and fiercely loyal. He struck without warning and vanished into the hills. When Robert the Bruce died, Douglas carried the king's heart in a silver casket, hoping to take it on crusade. Instead, he joined Christian forces in Spain and fell at the Battle of Teba in 1330, the casket still on his chest. His remains were later brought home and buried at St. Bride's Church in Douglas. John Chandos was born around 1320 in Derbyshire, England, a knight known for his balance of courage and calculation. Rising through the ranks under Edward III, he became one of the Black Prince's most trusted commanders and closest friends. At Crecy in 1346, Chandos fought in the heart of the English line. 10 years later, at Poitiers in 1356, he served as one of the prince's key advisors during the battle that ended with the capture of the French king himself. As Seneschal of Poitou, he ruled with fairness and restraint, earning praise even from his foes. The chronicler Jean Froissart called him a mirror of chivalry. In 1370, during a night skirmish near the bridge of Lussar in France, Chandos slipped on the frozen ground and was struck by a lance. He died the next day at the castle of Mortimer. In a century of endless war, he was one of the few who died with no hatred against his name. Bertrand du Guesclin was born around 1320 near Rennes, Brittany. He was a rough, defiant boy from minor nobility who seemed to break every rule of knighthood. He was stubborn and fiercely determined, but beneath his temper burned a strategist's mind and a soldier's will. His first great triumphs came at Cocherel in 1364 and Pontvalin in 1370. He favoured ambushes, sieges, and endurance over reckless charges. He was appointed Constable of France in 1370, to which he took command of a broken army and rebuilt it, restoring faith in a nation that had nearly lost hope. He understood that while the English excelled in open battle, they often failed to hold territory they had won. By 1380, illness caught up to him during the siege of Châteauneuf-du-Randon and was laid to rest among the kings at St. Denis. When he died, the English commander surrendered the fortress out of respect. Jean de Grailly was born around 1330 in Gascony, a land divided between English loyalty and French soil. Sworn to Edward III, he rose to become one of the Black Prince's most formidable commanders. At Poitiers in 1356, his cavalry charge shattered the French line and helped capture King John II. For his service, he was made a Knight of the Garter, a rare honour for a foreigner, and was admired for both his bravery and restraint. Later, he faced his rival, Bertrand du Guesclin, at the Battle of Courcelles, where he was captured after a French victory. Offered freedom in exchange for renouncing his liege, Jean refused to betray his oath and remained a prisoner. He died in captivity in 1376, still loyal to his king. William de Bohun was born around 1312, likely at Caldecott Castle in Wales, though both the year and place remain uncertain. Raised among England's nobility, he mastered not just the sword, but also the art of command and diplomacy, a man equally skilled in war and negotiation. He gained fame at Morlaix in 1342, where his smaller English force of archers and infantry held off a much larger French army. The same tactical patience defined England's later victories at Crécy in 1346 and during the Truce of Calais in 1347, which he helped secure. Named Earl of Northampton and among the first Knights of the Garter, he relied on coordination and planning rather than sheer heroics, earning victories through strategy more than spectacle. He died around 1360 and was looked back upon in a very respectable way. Thanks for listening to this week's video. If you're new here, feel free to stick around as I post a new one each week.